everybody, Fred the Pirate here, and I am here to do a review of the latest DC animated movie, which is called Flashpoint Paradox. And so this was a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. So essentially what happens in this movie is we follow Barry Allen the Flash as he is sent to an alternate reality where the world is at the verge of destruction. And it turns out the reason why it's at the verge of destruction is because the Amazonians and the Atlanteans are at war with each other, and they're also somewhat at war with the United States because of their actions. And it turns out in this universe that there's a lot of changes, and that so Barry's kind of figuring out, since he's been sent into this reality, how to fix it. It turns out in this reality that most of Europe has been destroyed by the Atlanteans, and with the exception of the United Kingdom, which belongs to the Amazons because they took it over, and now it's called New Themyscira. And so what is left of the Justice League is trying to figure out how to stop this and how to fix everything, and particularly Barry, because he knows something's wrong. So he's kind of trying to figure out how things worked out. So obviously, this movie is an adaptation of the comic book Flashpoint, which started out the new DC New 52. So essentially, a real quick synopsis of this is that we start out with Barry Allen and Iris West, who is, I think, Barry's girlfriend or fiance at this time. I don't know if they're quite married yet. So they're at the gravesite of his mother, and it turns out that Barry's mom was killed when he was a child by a home intruder. And so Barry blames himself for this. And right after that happens, we have a scene with Barry, and he's been called to the Flash Museum because several of his robes are in this museum and they're destroying shit. And he figures out, like, well, what the fuck are you guys doing in here? Like, why are you stealing my old shit? Like, and they're like, well, we're just here to destroy this because we got hired by somebody. And it turns out that the person that they have been hired by was the Reverse Flash. And so the Reverse Flash is using these other villains, which include Captain Cold, Captain Boomerang, and the Mirror Master. And so they're there. He plants bombs on them, and he traps Barry in the sticky goo, and he plants the bomb on him, and he tells them their plan. And so the Reverse Flash, Flash's plan, and his name is, I think, Igor Thar. Like, he's from the future, so he's from the 25th century, and so it turns out, obviously, he really hates the Flash. And so he tells them that since he's trapped Flash and he figures the Flash can't do anything, that he says, I'm going to trap you here and I'm going to detonate these bombs which can't be disarmed, and that I'm going to blow up the whole city. I'm going to blow up Central City where your museum is located, and I'm going to kill everybody, and that for the rest of history your legacy will be that you died and that you failed to save a city of people. And so it turns out, while this happened, that the Justice League show up and they help out the Flash. And the Justice League here involves Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and then Captain Marvel. Captain Atom, not Captain Marvel, and then Cyborg. And so, actually, I think Captain Marvel was there too. So I think we got both Captain Marvel and Captain Atom along with Cyborg. And so all of them pair up and they take one of the bad guys and they try to detonate the bomb. Barry ends up getting out, and he ends up the gooey stuff, and he ends up stopping Thar. And so, right before Thar gets arrested, he makes this jab towards Barry about saving people, and this makes Barry think about how he was unable to save his mom, which he really feels bad about, especially since this is his mom's birthday, and she's dead now. And so Barry kind of like, he tells Batman, because the Batman hears Thar make this jab, that he says, I just need to run it out. And then we get a quick cutscene where Barry ends up waking up at his desk, and it turns out, he finds out very quickly that shit's gone wrong, because he finds out that some of his bad guys are now good guys, in that there's not a Flash. And so he finds out that he doesn't have powers, and he finds out that his mom is not dead. And he also finds out about the war between the Amazonians and the Atlanteans and how everything's on the verge of just being really fucked up. And so essentially he spends the rest of the movie trying to figure out how things are different and how to fix, like, who caused this reality and how to fix it. And so he figures the way he's going to fix it is he'll get his powers back and he'll use the Speed Force to go back in time and fix the event that causes reality. And so essentially that's kind of what happens in this movie. And so it was really interesting. I really liked figuring out the differences between this reality and the regular reality. And so we find out, which initially that Barry thinks that Thor is the one who's responsible for this. That he thinks that Thor went and messed up the timeline and that this is why shit the way it is. So he wants to try to fix this. A really interesting movie. I think probably one of the most interesting implications of this, besides from the fact that the Amazonians and the Atlanteans are at war with each other, is in this reality there is not a Bruce Wayne, at least that who's Batman. Like, there was a Bruce Wayne, but it turns out that in this reality, when Joe Chill, who is the guy who attacks the Waynes, that instead of Joe Chill killing Thomas and Martha Wayne, that he kills Bruce. And that as a result of this, as a result of Bruce being killed instead of his parents, that his father becomes Batman, and it's strongly implied that Martha Wayne becomes the Joker. And because of this, like, Gotham is really, really fucked up in this movie. And so, like, a lot more fucked up than it normally is, which is saying a lot, like, because Gotham is not a nice place at all, like, in any incarnation. Like, story is no exception. It was really interesting to see Thomas Wayne as Batman, because he's definitely really different as a Batman than Bruce was as a Batman, because his motives for being a Batman are a lot different than Bruce's are. Like, Bruce became Batman because of his parents' death, and he became Batman so he could prevent that kind of thing from happening to anyone else, because he didn't want anyone else to experience what he experienced. But Thomas becomes Batman for revenge. Thomas operates a lot different than Bruce does, and that is a very interesting scene where Barry finds out what happened in this reality in regards to the Waynes, and that was a really interesting scene. So, like, Thomas Wayne is kind of more like a Unabomber Batman, and Bruce is kind of more of like a James Bond kind of Batman. So a very interesting dichotomy between those two characters. I think another interesting thing was, it was interesting to figure out essentially what happened to all of the Justice League members that we were introduced to besides Batman. It was really interesting to see Cyborg in this movie, because in this movie Cyborg really functions a lot the way Superman usually functions. Cyborg really acts kind of like this big Boy Scout, and Thomas Wayne mentions this, like, he pretty much calls him a Boy Scout. And it was really interesting seeing Cyborg act as essentially in this leadership capacity, because in this reality there's not a Superman. So, like, he acts the way Superman would act. So he's the leader, like, he's the idealist that believes in truth and justice in the American way. And it was really interesting, you know, seeing Cyborg try his best to be a really great leader and try to fix the problems with his world. And so that was really cool. Another thing that was really cool to see is that we find out in this reality that Hal Jordan is not a Green Lantern, because it turns out that he did not meet Abansor when he crash landed into the desert. But it turns out that he does get to pilot Abansur's jet, because the government's going to use him to fly over to Europe to kind of sneak attack the Atlanteans. We also find out what happened to Superman in this reality, and it turns out that in this reality Superman is not found by the Kents. That it turns out that the rocket that he was traveling in crash lands into Metropolis and it destroys it. And so we find out that Superman's been kept by the government his entire life. So when we find him, he's all emaciated and he's skinny and he's never been out in the sun, so he's never got to have his powers. So that was really interesting. Obviously, one of the really, really interesting things about this was the war between the Amazonians and the Atlanteans. So we find out how that went down. So we find out that in this universe that the reason why they're at war is because initially the Amazonians and the Atlanteans met with each other, that Arthur and Diana, met, and their two groups made a political pact with each other, and shit was really awesome. But then it turned out that Arthur and Diana ended up having an affair. And obviously, as you know, Arthur is married, so the problem. And so his wife, Mira, she finds out about this affair. She gets really pissed at Diana, and she tries to kill Diana. And so Diana, in response to this, kills her. And she takes Mira's crown from her, and she wears it as, kind of a warning and a trophy to other people, like that says, don't fuck with me. And in response to her killing Queen Mira of the Atlanteans declare war on the Amazons. And so the Amazons and the Atlanteans have been at war with each other for a really, really long time. I have to say, personally, although it was really cool seeing the Amazonians and the Atlanteans at war with each other, because that is a particularly interesting concept, like what would happen if those two groups were at war. I wasn't particularly thrilled about the motive for why the war started. I really didn't enjoy the fact that the reason why we have this gigantic war that has killed hundreds of millions of people and that has the whole world essentially on the verge of Armageddon is because of a love triangle and just, romance drama. I kind of would have wanted there to be, other reasons for this. That would have been, way, way, way cooler. I felt that was disappointing for kind of all parties involved. I think that this really kind of didn't do a lot for the characters of Arthur and Mira and Diana. I figured there could have been other ways to do this. I know in this reality, they're supposed to all be kind of assholes about stuff, but I don't like the romance drama aspect of why this giant war started. But otherwise, with that part, I pretty much really enjoyed everything else. This was a really great movie. It had a lot of action. I liked the animation. The music was really cool. The voice cast for this movie is the same for the Justice League series. So we get to see Kevin Conroy as Batman. Although he's not, Bruce Wayne Batman is not in the movie a lot. We see him in the beginning and the end of the movie. I don't know the actor who does the voice of Thomas Wayne, but pretty much everyone else in here I think, is the voice cast that's used in the Justice League, because the movie is titled Justice League Flashpoint Paradox. So it was a really cool movie. I really liked how it ended, although I'm not gonna give any spoilers for that, so you guys can check it out. But a really cool movie. One other thing that I really liked about this is when we see the Atlanteans fight, we get to see the different people who are involved. So we get to see Aqualad and Aquagirl. The cool thing about this movie is, besides seeing the comic book version of Aqualad, which if you've seen the Teen Titans, you've seen the comic book version of Aqualad. But we also get to see fighting with the Atlanteans, as we get to see Calder. So we get to see Calderon, who is Aqualad from the Young Justice. And that was really, really cool. I really like that fact. Even though Calder was a bad guy, an actual bad guy in this, and not just a triple agent bad guy, but an actual one. It was really cool to see Calder in this because, I don't know about you, but I really like Calder, and I think most people who've seen Young Justice and really like Young Justice really like Calder. He was a really popular character in that. So, needless to say, it was really cool seeing him in this movie. It was cool getting to see him fight alongside all the other Atlanteans. So that was really, really awesome. I really liked that. So that was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, was seeing that. I also liked the kind of all just seeing how all the characters interact with each other. That was really cool. So overall, this was a really great movie. I liked how it was resolved, and I liked, you know, when we figured out what caused this alternate reality in the first place, because what causes it is not what Barry initially thinks it is. And so it was kind of interesting seeing Barry fix this and seeing how stuff, you know, what caused it and fixing everything. And that was really cool. There's this really great moment at the end with Barry and Bruce that was really awesome, and I know a lot of people really like that, but I'm not going to spoil that for you guys. Really great movie. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys see it, and if you have seen it, let me know what you think about it, because I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it, and just, you know, make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.